Okay, I just feel like I really need to share this because it's just I'm in a constant state of shock right now. But also, I feel like I'm obligated to tell you I'm sorry, but I also say I might be able to start making videos again. I don't know when because I currently put my body in a very rough spot right now and my brain. So, to make it simple as I can, first things first, I know ADHD and autism, which don't help me a whole lot because it affects my attention span or has a big impact in what I want in life. Like it can affect because what the next thing I'm about to say is affected by this other thing. It's affecting my autism, which all because my autism also affects my interest and my focus, my motivation. Like part of the reason why I struggle with my content before, and also it's also a warning you guys to care for those who also are struggling with content or like having moments like me where you're blank minded or having zero creativity or like you can't seem to think of anything, then maybe you're overstimulated. You hear me? Overstimulated. So, do you know what a dopamine is? If you don't, please look it up. But it does play a huge part, but not the main reason of addiction. But it plays a part in addiction, but also plays a main part in your main like cognitive brain, like your frontal lobe. It mainly plays a big role in contributing to the function of that brain. But and it's also like a resource. Like you have levels, and if exposed to certain like levels of a certain type, like say, so dopamine. Like let me put it simple: stimulation. Your body craves it. Pleasure, things you like, things that drive you to do things. That's a stimulation to your body, to your brain, to your eyes. Like what you receive, what you perceive, stimulates your brain. Or other cases, stimulates dopamine. Dopamine is like stimulation. I know it sounds fun, but it's actually neurons. It plays. It is a contributing neuron in our brains that contribute to a lot of different parts between I can't remember heart because my brain is sort of overstimulated now, but like it I realized a lot of my life could have been different because of how I lived, how I did things, or how much I exposed myself to certain things. Especially stuff that stimulated me. Remember stimulation keyword here, stimulation. Basically when so dopamine aka or stimulation, you have certain levels of it or a certain amount you can produce. What I've also learned is people with ADHD, autism, I'm not sure what autism is, but people with ADHD mainly are people who have less dopamine levels. Like I don't have a whole lot of it, and I have ADHD, and the less you have of the dopamine neuron, the more you notice some very, very impactful mental issues. Like the less you have it, the less you function. One, and it's also probably a reason why you need sleep, because sleep is a main fast way to raise. Like okay, think of this. Think of your body or your brain as a pool of water that contains a certain amount of this dopamine, and you use it up like a resource through stimulation. Remember, your body does. You make the choices, but like in other words, dopamine. Then try to best simplify what I'm worried. What's causing me issues right now? It's gonna really impact me. I'm gonna get to it. Dopamine is basically like the fuel for your brain, or for motives, for pursuit, for triggering interest, because your body's interested. You crave it, like you like it, like it impacts your thinking, your thoughts, or it can also result if you have unhealthy or less dopamine or certain amounts of dopamine, because the less you have, but also when you're overdosed, like overstimulated on dopamine, like over like basically like, so let me put it like this. Say you didn't get any sleep at all, like for like the past 2 or 3 days. You're sluggish, you can't think, you can't focus, your brain's foggy because you didn't get that well needed rest. That's because you have less dopamine contributing to your brain right now. And your feeling, your vision, even your thought process and choice making, and whatever it also contributes to where you're addicted. Like, do you love making videos? That's somewhat of an addiction, but or a craving or a desire. But all you can feel is because your brain is so sleepy because it has so little dopamine of it, because you have that less contributing neuron that affects your main like thought process, like your main frontal lobe, which is meant for like a lot of the thinking, desiring. Just think about it. It's a cause and effect. So when you don't get enough sleep, you're sluggish. You're pretty much have little energy, little motivation. Don't know what you want to do. Just want to have one thing on your mind: sleep. But say you get those sleep, and you don't, and you're not overstimulated. You could be doing a lot of things. You could be doing all these hobbies you do love doing equally, because they equally or whatnot. Your life feels normal. You're doing all things you had planned today. You can think clear. You know what you want to say. You know what you're motivated to do. But keep this in mind. What you do sort of molds your body to a point where it feels like it just needs that. Like, say if you play only video games, your body thinks that's all you need for that natural stimulation that your brain needs to function. Because brain needs stimulation to function to a certain degree. But there is a thing called overstimulation or high stimulation. Or what I was referring to is a rush. And when you expose yourself to that quick and easy way, like some things bring you like high, like porn or racing, rush, so of those rushing, addictive, exciting things that stimulate your mind, your imagination, can make you go super high, but also result in like massive decline. Like, basically, your body will start craving the climax, just the satisfaction. Because like, say you do porn more than you need to, or you're doing certain activities only behind closed doors for extensive unhealthy amount of time, can mentally affect your thinking or what you want. Like, your body will have its own mind of its own. Basically, treat dopamine as your meter and how much of it you take in. Or, in other words, monitor what you're doing in your everyday life. Because let me put it like this: say you get more excitement and fun out of thrilling roller coasters. But if you do that on a daily basis, going high up and drastically dropping down in dopamine levels, like constantly up and down, like the higher the levels to expose your brain to, meaning like the continuation of that specific thrilling activity that gave you that excitement, the lower and lower your pool empties. Like, you have a certain level and a level before that. That's the level where or basically, you, the more you use up, then your body naturally uses on a healthy amount. The longer it takes to regenerate those quote unquote dopamine neurons, which affects how much you put into things, like how much effort you put into things, how much you want something. Like, your behavior depending on what you crave, what you want. Because again, your body doesn't know what you need or what you personally want. Your brain just dopamine levels dictate like what you want in like craving form, or what it craves it's your craving for stimulation. That dopamine neuron affects your stimulation, and your body will start craving it, whether it's eating ice cream, riding a bike. But when you expose yourself to those really highs, you can actually sort of overstimulate to your body where it gets very used to it. The point where it's like second nature of an addiction. Or like it affects your thought process. Like, for example, it affects your thought process of, well, that's all you want, or think that's what all you need to function. That's why people ask you to go exercise or do other things. But even exercise can be, but basically, the simple, when you do something that gives you those extreme highs for so long, your body adjusts to that. And what happens when you get those highs? You crave more and more and more, which becomes an addiction. But that's not the stop of the problems. The more you give into the exposure of that specific stimulation or thing you enjoy doing, you start losing other stuff, become less stimulating. Like, say, which would you want? Would you want a healthy carrot that does give stimulation, but not as much satisfaction as a delicious chocolate bar? You take a chocolate bar, yeah. You think one won't hurt, but when you get addiction or you start feeding your body that crazy, the more you want that taste, like that craving, that stimulation, that satisfying thing your body wants, the more the other thing becomes less and less viable than what your body might need. That, like, you need to minimize, you need to watch how much you do of a certain activity, like the amount you do it, especially if you don't have hard time focusing, because there's a lot of things of it, but like, think about, this is about overstimulation. When you overstimulate your brain on, like I'm saying, because I'm overstimulated, the moment you pull away from that one activity that was providing that stimulation, desire, or need, your body sort of gets fog brain. It struggles to think. It feels like the world's fogged around. Like, you can't think. You can't. You don't know what you want to do. You don't know what I want to pick, because your brain is highly addicted or overstimulated to like a point where if you do anything less stimulating, like basically, the more you do of this, the less something else becomes stimulating, or less dopamine levels, or basically the less, it's part of addiction, the less of that will cause you to lose interest in a lot of things, or affect your thinking of what you think you want. I became so dull. It's that serious. How? Because now, even when I look away from my phone, I actually struggle to think of anything. Like, afterthought, like, what do I want? Like, you can't decide. You try thinking on something, like, try thinking of choice-wise. Like, there's so many factors in this issue, but, like, overstimulation can actually massively affect you in general than you think. You want to avoid overstimulating, otherwise you're going to have a fog brain. What I mean by fog brain is basically, after finally stopping whatever's currently keeping you stimulated, what's keeping you active, what's keeping you engaged with that high levels of dopamine, remember, once it ends, it drops drastically when it's not constantly being provided, especially from a screen or something. You start feeling foggy. Your mind can't think. You can't make simple choices between two things. You don't know what you want, because you're overstimulated, because your brain it's basically like a drug. When you're overstimulated, nothing else interests you. When you're not stimulated by a certain thing, you don't want it. Like, games stimulate me. I crave games. I love playing games. It's fun. But when I'm exposed to higher and higher levels of that of exposure of that type of stimulation, I start losing. I start not doing less of other things. I got stimulated. Like I don't find stimulation in making videos anymore. I don't find it fun. I don't crave it. I can't, and it doesn't help that I can't think either, because my mind becomes numb to thinking or the other function that dopamine provide because I burnt out my dopamine, but I'm still living in that extreme rush. Basically, also if you have ADHD, you have less dopamine levels, which means you can over if I'm reading this correctly, you can overstimulate on something too much. It affects everything else around you, whether it's making a goal, whether it's giving a dog. Because remember, dopamine affects other parts of the brain, not just addiction or cravings. It affects your thoughts. It affects your perception of what you see, and basically, you're pretty much high. Your body is living in that exhilaration moment, that stimulation, and it's gonna. And I realized I became, the more I kept doing more exciting things, the less and less I started doing videos, and the more I started watching videos than making them. You starting to see where I'm going with this? I don't know how the combo of autism as well. Because keep in mind, does autism and ADHD have their own effects as well between losing interest in hobbies you found pleasurable, like I said, pleasure as in stimulating pleasure, fun, activity, thriving. The more you did that, the more you wanted it. And we started doing the less of that and doing something that gave you more stimulation, you start becoming addicted to stimulation. And I fell victim to that, to a point where now I can't even think about anything else. Like, if I look at this, I can't think. I literally can't. I have no opinions. I don't know what I want. I can't make a choice because I have no desire for whatever they ask from me. Like, do I desire a chocolate bar or do I desire ice cream? I don't know because my brain doesn't want it because it, or doesn't want it because I don't feel stimulated. I don't feel thrilled about it. I don't find satisfaction in it because I'm overstimulated over the thing that kept me sustained. Like video games kept me thrilled for an extensive period of time to the point where I crave more of that than this. It became a habit, but it affected my thinking because now I don't know what I want anymore besides games or a video. It doesn't help either when you have struggle with autism too, which again plays a bigger key for struggle when trying to keep your focus on certain things. But like I'm saying, I'm currently overstimulated, and if I don't do other things, I'm not sure how to destimulate. But basically, if you don't get the natural amount of sleep to get those dopamines you need, because when you don't have dopamines, you don't perform at your best. But if you expose yourself to extreme amount of dopamine as your brain's forming over time, where it becomes addiction, your body starts depending on that specific stimulation to the point where you start thinking it's what you need when it's not. Like you could be full dead on focused on like trying to make a video, but when you start trying to do it, you're fog brained, you're blank, you can't think anything because your dopamines are being overstimulated, because your dopamine is your stimulation, or your dopamine is your contributor to your stimulation. Like it plays a key role into function of your brain. It plays a key role in splitting into other parts of your brain that allows you. In short, all I'm asking you guys is take a time out of your day to calm down, limit yourself to whatever you're addicted to. Because if you expose yourself, especially in content creating, you can burn yourself out, or you can become so stimulated in that activity that it could affect your choice making in other aspects of your life. Whether it's whether it's motivation, saying a goal, you gotta what I'm saying this now because you might end up being so fog brained that you can't make any videos or whatever content you're making. And clearly, I fell victim to it, especially with my autism, which doesn't help because I used to love to draw. I used to love to do other things. I used to love making videos, but now I've stimulated my brain so much with a specific type of levels for most of my life that I forgot other things. I became less active on certain things that had lower satisfaction. I overstimulated my brain. I can't think of anything. So to put simple your brain, don't get an addiction, but like limit yourself to whatever gives you the highest thrills. Like if you don't want to lose interest in making videos, try limit whatever. Try to do that more often, but also make room to do other activities because you may not have enough stimulation or craving. I became this blank minded because I didn't do other things with my life besides gaming, watch TV, or swim. Careful on what you're stimulated on.